it's Chris, correct?
That's right, Chris.
That we'd be paying less rates through getting the energy from you rather than from UI, for example. You had said distribution and transmission would be cut by 50%?
To the WPCA, because there's no public right-of-way between the plan.
Right.
So I believe that we're allowed to sell power directly to WPCA, and in that instance there'd be no transmission or...
Yeah, that's exactly right. The rule in Connecticut is you have to be a public utility in order to cross a public right-of-way.
Right, there's no public.
So there's no public right-of-way. So your transmission and distribution charges to the WPCA are eliminated.
They're waived.
Because
right.
you can essentially, I'm a lawyer, not an engineer, you can put an extension cord from the plant to the other plant. Nobody wants me doing math on this project. For the other thing, Chris mentioned virtual net metering. The idea behind that is, for example, this building needs electricity, you have schools, et cetera, that need electricity. So about half the load will be the wastewater treatment plant. The other half the load will be up to 5 other buildings that the town nominates.
Right.
That's where you get into the 50% because you are taking money out of UI's pocket, because what you're doing is you're putting the remaining half a megawatt onto the grid, and you're having the town's meters net essentially run backwards against the power that you're putting on the grid. And you're saying these particular electrons that are coming from this anaerobic digester should be the electrons that are being used by the city. The utilities correctly point out that they still have to maintain the lines and do the transmission and distribution because electrons just don't flow neatly. They're part of the grid. So the state legislature in last year's session designed a way for everyone to essentially win-win. So for those remaining buildings that are net metered, you pay half the transmission and distribution charge that you would pay to UI, because you're in the UI service territory. And then for the WPCA, you don't pay any transmission and distribution.
And then in January 2013, when you were here, and I believe I had actually asked the question, will our rate always be less than what we would pay at the current UI rate? For example, if it's a 10% rate, 10 cents rate, would Greenpoint and the partnership that you guys have always guarantee Ansonia, the city of Ansonia, that it would be, for example, an 8% or an 8 cents or 9 cents, something less than the going rate?
Well, I mean, that's something we could work with the city with. I mean,
Right, there's a lot of things, Chris, to work out with the city.
that's what we...
And that's why you've been here for 3 years, since 2011.
yeah.
Yes. So all those things that we're asking about that can work, we know there's a possibility to have them worked out, but do we have a guarantee that it will always be less?
Well,
Because it would be a shame to get into an agreement and build a $20 million facility, and all of a sudden, the city's now on the hook paying more to you than it would be to UI.
yeah, I think it's fairly... The rate that we've assumed, just to be upfront, the rate we've assumed is a 10 cent per kilowatt hour rate for 25 years with indexation at 3%.
Wow.
I'm not sure what the city pays now for energy.
Wouldn't that be
Well, I know
wouldn't that be
when we looked at
good
this...
to find out and have that information as to what the city pays right now, so we're not paying more?
Yeah, well, I think the rates, the advantage that this project and having this type of arrangement gives to the city is that it provides the city with certainty as to what it will be paying. You know, paying power where you're effectively indexed to the natural gas price, which is what the utilities do now. So as the natural gas price goes up,
Yes.
the rate goes up, if it goes down, sometimes goes down. So this is not linked to the natural gas price. It's just an agreement that we will, the city will pay this, will pay X dollars or X cents per kilowatt hour, next 25 years for power. It will save on the transmission charges. So on an all-in basis,
Does anyone ever want to be all in on anything?
well, yeah, you do, because that's...
You want to have all your eggs in one basket? You're
well,
okay. You're good. You don't have to answer anymore. I have another question. I forgot your name. I'm sorry.
I'm late.
Lake. I'm Tara. You know, one of our biggest problems in the city is having dinosaur buildings left over.
I'm glad you brought that
Oh,
up.
no.
Because she also raised
Yes,
that.
but my concern is, in not 20 years or 25 years, if anaerobic digestion is growing at a very fast pace, and in 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years, you know what, there's a very smart mayor in Shelton, Mayor Mark Loretti. He says, whoa, if Ansonia's doing this, I can do this. I can put one right off of Route 8. You can go down to Norwalk and they can say, whoa, Mark's doing it in Shelton, I can do it down here. Wait, there's a guy in Trumbull. Wait, if they're doing it, I can do it. New mayor in New Haven, she may say, wait, we can do this. How are we going to not get cannibalized? Where's our protection in this? So that, yes, you make money. Your $20 million, your ROI, what would your ROI be and the length of time it would take?
Well, it's not as good as you might think it is, but...
You wouldn't be in business if it wasn't.
Well,
Because it is a business, first and foremost.
there's a... I don't even mention that, but for me, it's not really, but it's... No, trust me.
I think that.
So does the state have anything in legislation right now that says, you know what, in New Haven County, we're only going to allow 2 anaerobic digesters so that we don't get cannibalized? So we start out as this great project, and it looks phenomenal on paper, and everyone comes together, but in 3 years, Shelton has one, and in 5 years, Norwalk has one, and in 6 years, New Haven has one, and guess what? City Carding doesn't want to come to Ansonia anymore because they can go 5 miles closer to their Stanford facility and drop it in Shelton, or 15 miles closer and drop it in Norwalk. Where's our protection as a city with the state? Are they going to limit how many they put up? Or are we going to be cannibalized in 5, 10, 15, 20 years and the building's sitting there?
Well, if I knew it was going to happen 5, 10, 20 years from now, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in Vegas betting at the sports book. But to answer your question more seriously, there's 2 things going on. One, right now, the state is redoing its solid waste management plan. As I mentioned, they got rid of the CRA and moved on to MIRA. And this is a key component of what the state is looking at. The state has already done something similar in terms of more traditional biomass projects, which are the ones that burn wood chips, like you have Plainfield Renewable, and you had another one that was being looked at Basra, where the state figured out what the wood load was and how many pallets you're going to have coming off of forklifts that you can chop up and turn into energy. The state is going to be looking at something similar through the solid waste management plan for that very reason, because while you do want to have these compost facilities up and running, the thinking is that you'd have one roughly every 20 to 30 miles in the more densely populated areas, and then when you get up into the northwest and northeast corners, you may not even have the density at all. The second thing, and on the Alderman's concern about, I know that one of the concerns that Ansonia would have, given the Ansonia brass mill, is the white elephant. If the project goes out, what happens to the residents? And the Siting Council has taken that. I don't know if you've been following, but NRG Meriden tried to essentially hand Meriden the keys to their building and say, have a nice day, and walk out. And that project was permitted back in the 90s when there was no concern over this. But if you look at the recent petitions and certificates that have come out of the Siting Council, you will see that there is a financial assurance mechanism for all the projects. If you look at the recent wind projects and the recent solar projects that have gone up and the other renewable projects, there is a bonding requirement or a financial or other financial security mechanism that the state is now requiring to dismantle the project so that the host community isn't stuck with a white elephant. So even if the absolute worst case scenario that you posit happens, or I know you asked that question earlier, we are getting around to answering it, is even if that happens, the state has protections in place for the town so that if the worst happens, you admittedly lose the facility and Chris loses his investment, but the property goes back to the way it was. So you don't have that issue that you have with...
So they have to take it, you said it goes back to the way it was, and I'm not trying to be redundant, but they'll have to clear it and leave it back at the empty space that it was. They'd have to take away everything.
They will have to do whatever the state requires to fully decommission the site. So I don't know what's going to happen here because it's part of the approval process. What I do know is for the wind projects and the solar projects that I have permitted, all of the equipment has to come out And in one case, the field has to become a field again, and in the other case, the woods have to become the woods again. You obviously don't have either fields or woods, so I'm not sure what the state would require, but there's a plan in place.
But as
for the
of right
development
now,